Hey everyone, thank you for coming to the talk. Am I audible? Yeah, till the back? Yeah, okay, awesome, thanks. Uh, yeah, so a quick background about myself, just to kind of put things in context as well. So I've built 3 companies before, been 11 years in the space of Bitcoin. I currently work for a Swiss private bank. I lead global innovation and technology for the bank, and yeah, I also invest in a lot of Bitcoin startups, and I frequently give talks across the globe on Bitcoin. I will be covering a little bit in context of what I do. So this is what I work on. I mostly work on Miniscript. How many of you heard about Miniscript? Okay, great, 3 people. Awesome. Miniscript is an abstracted language on top of Bitcoin script. And I work also on enterprise custody side a lot. Yeah, and I will be sharing a little bit in context of inheritance and wealth planning from a wealth management standpoint on the idea of Bitcoin. Yeah, a big disclaimer, no financial advice. It's only a point of view. Don't get too excited and do your own due diligence if you're investing. So it's important. I come from a bank. Yes, before we begin, I wanted to take a little bit of risk of also doing this. So just to kind of check in the audience if you're alive, if you're awake, the coffee. So I'm just going to kind of throw some opinionated point of views just for the sake of waking you up. Maybe you get charged up and say, no, I don't agree. That's fine. So a disclaimer. Yes. So do try and pay attention here. This is how the narrative started, that probably Bitcoin is part of crypto. We need to improve Bitcoin, and that's how the whole plight of bringing new different chains came along. And that's how you saw the evolution of a lot of chains saying that we are faster, we are better, we are more aggressive, we are more innovative, and that's how you would always bucket Bitcoin as part of being crypto. Long enough, a lot of people have stated this as well, that Bitcoin's not crypto, and you would see often, the evidence is there in the conferences as well. Bitcoin conferences are Bitcoin conferences, and then crypto conferences, you wouldn't find too much Bitcoin around at all. So the reality that's turning out is that probably crypto is part of like fiat and it's not Bitcoin. So maybe this charges you up a little bit to disagree. I'm sure it does. If not, then yeah. So do kind of think about this. I'm actually kind of, and the reason why I say this is to everyone who kind of says that we are doing a better Bitcoin, they probably don't know the below the iceberg, below the sea iceberg. So there is 40 years of development work that's gone behind Bitcoin. And all of this is innovation in academia that eventually all adds up for Bitcoin to accidentally get engineered. So many people have attempted Bitcoin before. It was not called Bitcoin, it was called all different names. But it has taken 40 years of academic work for some cyberpunks to actually eventually come with Bitcoin. So all the other chains that are attempting to solve might also be solving some of these problems in a different way, in an incorrect way as well. So something again to think about. And yes, final one. This was in the Genesis block of Bitcoin put in by Satoshi. How many of you seen this before and thought about it? Yeah, great. I don't know how much have you focused on this. We know this, right? Chancellor on the brink of second bailout for banks. This everybody knows. Do you see an image above that? And do you see the title? Israel prepares to send tanks and troops into Gaza. This is 2008. This is not now. Yeah, it's repeating. Like the inflation story keeps repeating, the war story also keeps repeating. This is, I'm just reading facts here. So what I'm trying to highlight here is that there is some context accidentally that got linked also in that newspaper. And interestingly enough, there is an ad, eat out from £5. Again, it's an inflation question that we're talking about. So yeah. Now to the main topic. I just wanted to kind of get your attention. So What's the magic behind store of value? Where does Bitcoin really get its sort of, I think the previous speaker briefly talked about, we are talking about opening value chains beyond the information, value channels beyond the information channels. Where does the value come from, the store of value? It comes from the Bitcoin's model of UTXO and proof of work. But how much have we deliberated on the basics of this? I would like to kind of cover before I go into the story of why store of value will become like a game changer in the next decade. UTXO model is all about change coins. It's a very standard thing. So in your wallet you have $100 and you give it to a retail counter. You buy something for $80 and you get $20 back. That $20 that you get back has to be represented on a chain in a certain way, and that is unspent transaction output. So that $20 back in your wallet is UTXO, nothing beyond that. So that's as simple as it can get. This is what UTXO is, it's change coins. And on the other side, we have this different people who are auditing the network. So typically corporate balance sheets, they get audited after what periodicity? Would anybody be able to quickly give an answer? Your corporate balance sheets, your company balance sheets, they get audited at what frequency? 1 year. How frequently do central banks get audited? They say I have X amount of money. Do they really have it? Or if there is some gold fractional reserve in some country, how frequently it gets audited? So the most interesting property is that this network gets audited every 10 minutes. Every 10 minutes from any country. You just have to plug in a Bitcoin miner, a node, and you'll be able to kind of figure out whether you hold the coins or whether a certain address claiming to hold the coins holds the coins or not. Very powerful, right? So how does that proof of work play out to ensure that all of this auditing is going fine? Is where you use a lot of energy, which is the Bitcoin mining energy, to avoid double spend. So that's the same coin cannot be misused to spend the second time, the cheating angle of it, right? When you have created something digitally, it's very easy to kind of say and give the same coin to two people and then say, I gave you and I paid you. To ensure that before the second time you've spent the same coin, you use actually real resource, which is your electricity energy, to be able to confirm that coin is already spent. That is one of the most interesting aspects of auditing the network. And I think this combination of a UTXO model of change and a ledger, I will just roll the slide. So what happens is there is an Alex's wallet and Julia's wallet. On the left hand side, you have 4 UTXOs, which is basically change, a 5 BTC, a 0.2 BTC and a 0.8. Think of them as like a 10, 50 and $100 bill, right? So from all previous transactions, you have them here. And before you spend and send some money to Julia, you actually decide to combine two. So maybe a 50 and $100 is what you combine, and you want to give it to Julia. But maybe you have decided to give 140. So there will be a 10 change. And that 10 change will eventually come back as a new UTXO for future transactions. And what money you've given will get combined and will go there. This is what goes into the transaction of a block. So when we say Bitcoin blockchain, block, the block has multiple transactions, and one transaction, which is this yellow-brown kind of transaction diagram that you see, inputs and outputs, is one transaction in a block. And we assemble these blocks as part of the blockchain. So this is the chain. While everybody is forming transactions and broadcasting it to all peers, a lot of people talk about 10 minutes being too slow, right? I said 10 minutes is too fast because you see it from the context of an auditing standpoint. Corporate balance sheets get audited every year. You can do it in 10 minutes. But have you ever thought about why it's 10 minutes? You're broadcasting globally using computers that go at the speed of light. You cannot beat the speed of light. while broadcasting a transaction. So there is a limitation at physics level of not being able to beat the speed of light. And you have to build consensus across the world between all the miners. So that 10 minutes is interestingly designed. It's not by fluke a number that just came up in the mind. There's a lot of thought that has gone behind that, is what gets discussed. So the longest chain, so we discussed about the every 10 minutes. The miners are solving extremely difficult math puzzles to assemble the blocks so that the double spend doesn't happen. If you make this easy, if you do not use energy, then anybody can misuse and fake this and create a duplicate transaction. That is what gives Bitcoin its most unique property, which is the double spend cannot happen with a security budget, which is basically energy, electricity being projected to guarantee this. So every time you use a lot of energy, you're competing with a resource that nobody can fake. That's the real part. And that's what creates the store of value nature of this. That is why everybody's going left, right, center, acquiring this as a store of value. So every 10 minutes, each node confirms and audits transactions. And obviously in today's time, the winner gets 3.125 BTC. So that's an issuance schedule to generate more predetermined Bitcoins. We all know about this part. But the most important part is the confirmations is across. So each head or each person that you see is an abstracted form of a miner. So every miner or a node is actually confirming that yes, this is the transaction that has moved on an UTXO model, and that's where the chain actually plays its role of being auditable through and through. So you can go back 16 years and also figure out whether the Satoshi coins have moved also or not. And the most interesting part is this hash rate, which is basically a measurement of what amount of power needs to be used, actually gets then measured on the side of all Bitcoin miners. So it will take this cumulative energy of this purple, right, to actually go and change the transaction in the Bitcoin ledger. No government can do it. No corporation can do it. That is what gives Bitcoin its real value, why it is store of value. And that's the difference between Bitcoin and all the other chains. So proof of work and the UTXO model is what makes the store of value nature of it. So you have to kind of, I just wanted to unpack this. But what has this got to do with store of value? It's got to do with hyperdeflation and then HyperBitcoinization. So before that, we should talk about technological hyperdeflation. Has anybody experienced hyperdeflation in this room? Show of hands, show of hands. 2 people have experienced hyperdeflation. Interesting. So others are wondering, we've heard about hyperinflation and we might run the risk of going hyperinflation. What is this guy talking about hyperdeflation, right? So you've experienced it. You all have. Anybody who uses computing devices has experienced hyperdeflation. Give me a minute, but let me give you the definition first. So it refers to extremely large decreases in general prices of goods and services in an economy and large increases in money purchasing power. Purchasing power increasing, and we have experienced it. Where have we experienced it? So we've experienced it. Yeah, I'll come to this slide. We've experienced it on the hard drives, mobile phones, computers. So it's called price go down, quality go up, right? We experience it every day. We are able to get a better phone with a far more bigger capability every year, but the prices stay same or they get lowered depending on the brands you choose. So you actually experience hyperdeflation, and all electronic goods demonstrate this behavior, right? So this is important to keep in your mind, because I'm going to extrapolate this idea now. So here is what, I'm just going back. Here is what Gary Tan, anybody knows Gary Tan, the lead guy for Y Combinator, president of Y Combinator, and Vinod Khosla, they both talk about how technology has this nature of creating everything as hyperdeflationary, right? And so what's going to happen is at the convergence of this singularity that gets talked about, we are seeing humanoid robots, we are seeing nuclear energy start again in the US, we're talking about quantum computers, and we're also talking about longevity. So all of this in the next decade is going to come together to create a singularity where whatever you experienced on your computers, telephones as hyper-deflationary, which is basically going down in prices and quality high, all of the other things that you experience today in inflation will actually flip down. So your food, your shelter, because of these technological advances which have an ability. So in 10 years time, you most probably will enter into an abundance era. Opposite. I mean, we are scaring ourselves every day thinking that it's going to be inflationary. What's going to happen is this technological evolution will actually flip all of those challenges. In fact, it's already happening. For housing, I will show it to you. For housing, you're already experiencing all houses across the world, all real estate across the world is already, prices are collapsing. In your currency terms, it might be increasing. That might be a misnomer to you. It might create a feeling to you, your real estate prices are going up, but they're not, they're collapsing. In the last 10 years, 15 years, they're collapsing. I'll show you some data. So you've already started seeing that housing is falling. The other pieces, the education, college education, hospital services will also, because of these technological evolution, the cost of intelligence has gone down to zero with LLMs. You see it, right? You experience it. The cost of labor with the humanoid robots will go down. The cost of input materials, most probably, if reusable rockets are already a present today, so we might be bringing in all materials we want in 5 to 10 years from some of this space planets. So you see a big change coming in. I might be wrong by 5 years, so it could be 10 or 15 years. Nobody can time that in that discussion, but it's very close to our horizon of kind of feeling this. So what does that do? It creates the hard drive kind of scenario for all goods and services across for you, right? Now you have a challenge. The challenge is, it's a world of abundance. And what is the question and meaning of wealth then? So wealth as a concept is interesting when there is scarcity at your personal level. But if it becomes a world of abundance with this technological advancement, your purchasing power of whatever wealth you have keeps on increasing in a deflationary, hyper-deflationary world, then how do you measure wealth, right? How do you really kind of measure wealth? So here is the troubling idea to your mind, right, that I want to give you. So don't think of Bitcoin as a store of value also. Don't think of Bitcoin as a payment network. Think of Bitcoin like a metric system, like a ruler or scale. It's actually that. So the only way to measure wealth and quantum of wealth in an absolute sense between all different people, including human effort and machine effort, and between two humans, you actually can think of measuring the GDP economic output of any human activity can eventually be denominated in Bitcoin terms. So think of Bitcoin more like a metric system, your kilometers, your miles. So all of you have come down from your hotels here, right? You must have looked at Google Maps from your hotels and you would have seen, 3 kilometers. And then you're telling your other friend, oh, I'll be there in like 5 minutes. You're estimating your time based on your kilometer distance. But what if you were not able to measure that distance and you wouldn't be able to quantify to each other, including we are all quantifying it. But wealth, today we've not been able to quantify in absolute sense. We've only been able to do it on a proxy, which is basically what currencies we use, right? So think of Bitcoin like that, and then in a hyper-deflationary world, you're able to actually measure. Yeah, that's the world we live in today. That's the world we are going towards, is what I'm trying to highlight to you. And hyper-Bitcoinization is not something that will create wealth by itself. It's the technological progress that will create wealth. So a lot of times people are mistaken that the cryptocurrencies or the Bitcoin in itself is going to make them wealthy. It's really not that the case. It's a way to measure your wealth. Effectively, there has to be an underlying value creation which will actually make you more wealthy, which is what the technological progress is. So So that's exactly what, I don't know how many of you follow Michael Saylor, but he's given that kind of analogy for Manhattan. So in 1700s, Manhattan was created, and a lot of people said uh, uh, Manhattan is the land for wealth. So he kind of argues an analogy saying that the new cyber Manhattan is actually Bitcoin. But just by having and sitting in Manhattan doesn't mean you'll become wealthy. You'll have to build an economy, houses, everything over there. So it's exactly the point that I'm trying to highlight here as well. So hyper-Bitcoinization won't make you wealthy. Creating an economy from this barren land is what will, and that's exactly where the technological progress will happen. Bitcoin will only help you measure it. It's a measuring instrument. It just happens that this measuring instrument is so novel that everybody wants to buy a piece of it, and they're getting wealthy in the early journey of it. In the longer term, it's just going to be a measuring tool. Yeah. So we work a lot on this. We think about a lot from a perspective of wealth banking, and when will this happen? So a lot of you guys wouldn't know that we talk about Lightning Network also. Let me just quickly move this one slide. So store of value has to first follow through before we can even kind of discuss about medium of exchange. So medium of exchange is Lightning. So Lightning as a technology is awesome. From a business case standpoint, if you have to make money, it won't happen until the store of value has happened. So store of value goes on till 2034. Unless it's not adopted like a store of value, the Lightning use cases might not happen from a business standpoint. Technologically, yes, we all can be excited as engineers. And likewise for unit of account. That unit of account is everything denominated in sats. So in a conference, we do see sometimes tickets getting denominated in sats. But imagine your entire economy, your burgers, your everything is denominated purely in sats, and they're not volatile. That's where it becomes a measurement instrument. That unit of account is where it becomes an instrument to measure the GDP economic output. Yeah. Bitcoin is still not big. It's just 1.4 trillion out of 900 trillion stored wealth across the globe. Just 1.4, or maybe a little bit more because of the recent jump in the last week, but that's the size it is going after, and it is going after these asset classes. So it's not competing for the utility tokens, it's competing for the actual monetary premium that is there for all of these other assets. And this is what is anticipated that will happen in the near term in the next 10 years. Maybe it will nibble off $200 trillion out of the 900. It doesn't happen. Even it wouldn't do 100%. Yeah, and how will it happen is how it will nibble what percentages of each of these asset classes. Yeah. So I think I just wanted to highlight this aspect of that there are these proven curves that I'm talking about that is repetitively been seen for a lot of technology adoption. If we as youngsters are thinking that it will happen tomorrow instantly, it's not the case. These things take time and they follow certain curves. So it's really important to kind of understand them. Yeah. And mostly Bitcoin will land up with the institutions and governments in spite of the plebs. So the plebs still hold, but eventually there will be a price point where all of them will be able to force you to kind of give up and yield your Bitcoin. Today, if I give you $1 million over the counter to give your Bitcoin, you will yield because you believe you can buy it at the exchange. So there will always be a price that you will yield to, and that effectively will allow consolidation of this Bitcoin going to a lot of institutions and central banks. We are starting to see this. A lot of people are thinking of MicroStrategy more than trying to hold the Bitcoin directly. So the question is at you, whether how do you want to kind of enable this ecosystem going forward? Yeah. So this is the house one that I was talking about. Do this exercise if you can at your home. Look at your house value in your currency and look at the value of your house in BTC terms then, 2017, and then try to evaluate in 2024. You'll actually see with BTC terms it's falling. This is very disturbing because a lot of people believe their asset is appreciating in real estate, but in BTC count it's very, very difficult. So you must do this exercise to understand why Bitcoin is then being looked at as a store of value and why other governments are talking about now, or people are talking about putting it in the central bank as a strategic reserve in case of the US. I mean, presidential candidate Donald Trump also kind of announced this. Why? Because they believe that's how they'll be able to pay debt, because this is an absolute store of value, and still playing the first curve. Remember the 3 curves? It's still playing the first curve. Store of value before a medium of exchange, before a unit of account. So this has like legs for next 10 years, and you will keep seeing this for all other asset classes. It will fall. And that's how we move towards a hyper Bitcoinization world. So it chops and eats away the monetary premium from all the other asset classes. This is what we are seeing. This probably get exacerbated a lot more going forward. Yeah, and then that's where the whole question, the end game comes. We all talk about currencies, we talk about Bitcoin, but the whole idea is to kind of look at inheritance, to really see whether, you know, are you really thinking about inheritance planning, and how are you planning this from a Bitcoin standard standpoint? Because the end game is all the coins have to go to your loved ones or have to plan for your retirement. So if you're really not thinking about inheritance, you have to kind of start thinking whether do you have your setup ready. Yeah, these are some of the kind of length and breadth of how Bitcoin gets managed across different asset classes. So this is the variety of products that are available today. If you're a BTC investor, you're actually looking a gamut of these products, right from a security. Again, I said no financial advice, so I'm just telling you what the factual options are. I'm not advising on any of them to you. So ETFs are there, and then you also can do a direct custody setup. You can take it via some of the private banks out there, and then you can do with the relatively newer players like Unchained and others to do a collaborative custody setup. So these are different custody setups. The challenge is the simplicity and the convenience of doing it and the sophistication required to manage BTC. Yeah, I think I'm at the end of my talk. So there are more talks if you get a chance, and if you're more interested in this topic, feel free to Google my name in YouTube also. You should be able to find some of these talks previously as well. Yeah.